Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Sue Sutcliffe, and I'm owner-operator of World Event Center. And Claudine asked me if I would come up and share with you, for those people that are new, what about World Event Center. And so we'll be pretty quick. Most of you do, but for those new ones, World Event Center is probably different than anything you've ever seen before. So let me just quickly walk you through why it's different and how you can use it to your max. So World Event Center has two modes. Right now we're in presentation mode. We just came from conversation mode. Now, presentation mode is pretty feature rich and it has all the typical features you would expect, but really the magic sauce happens with conversation mode. So in conversation mode, guests have a bird's eye view of the whole floor. You can click and drag that screen to move it around, ladies. So don't, if you're not seeing everything, why not zoom in, zoom out, drag it around, get it the way you want it. And you can move around freely by double clicking on an empty chair. You will only see the people in video chat that you are sitting with. So you're not going to hear the table beside you, but you will be able to see that they're there. The table chat, by the way, is private, whereas the public chat goes to everyone. So if you're sharing your contact information and stuff like that, you may want to get it in the public chat. You'll also see that there's some banners on the left, and I'm not sure if I think they're just on the left today. And if you click on there, you can get some more information, including how you can download this and have your own meeting. So connecting with other guests is really easy. The way that you do it is you click on the avatars, which are the little circles on the map when we go back. And when you do that, you can learn a little bit more about the person. You can also click through to their LinkedIn, their Facebook, their website. You can send them chat messages, or you can schedule a meeting if they've set that up. So let's talk about how you set that up. Avatars are easy to optimize. On the top right-hand corner of the screen, you'll see a circle, and it's either going to have your photo on it or a first initial. You click on Update Profile. You can upload a photo. I think most of you have that. But have you updated all the information that's there? Are you representing yourself well? Try clicking on your avatar when you get back to the floor to get a sense of what kind of image you're portraying about yourself. So that's it, other than just let you know that there is a help desk at the bottom left. I'm going to be keeping an eye on that. So if you have any problems with sound or audio, by all means, go double click on the help desk and I'll come over and see you. Most of them are because of system requirements, which are shown to your left. And some people will find that every once in a while, they're going to have to clear their cache. Okay. And you do that in Windows by hitting Control plus Shift and then the R key. Or if you're on a Mac, you're going to click on Command plus Shift and the R key. So that's it for me, Claudine. I'll pass the stage to you and let you do your stuff.
Thank you, Sue, so much. And my heart, thank you, Sue. Every month, Sue is here to help us with the World Event Center. As you know, I'm not tech savvy, so I would die without Sue. So if any of you are hosting events anytime and need an amazing support or a platform to use, I highly recommend Sue. She is my savior. So welcome to the Pink Coach University. For those of you that are new here today, or you need a refresher, the Pink Coach University is part of your coaching program at the Pink Coach. It is something that I think as business owners and leaders, we need to stay on top of our education. And so I always promise every month to bring you the best in education and speakers. So this month, I'm very excited to have Sara on board. So if you take pictures of each other, meet some new people, please post #TPCU and let's get that out on social media. But it is a client exclusive event, but feel free to post. So a couple of welcomes, some new faces here today. Welcome back, Avni. Last time Avni wasn't here. Avni is in our furthest away Pink Coach family member that we don't often get to see. And she was on vacation last month. So she is back this month, Miss Avni, all the way from Nairobi, Kenya. So please find her and say some hellos. And we have some new faces on board today. So please welcome, I don't know if Susan Patterson is here, Jackie Brown, JB is in the house, Miss Desiree Neville, Sunny, I don't think Sarah is on, but Dimple is here as well, and Sandy couldn't make it. So lots of new faces, lots of new family members. Please give them all a warm, warm welcome. We will leave a little bit of time. Oh, hi, Susan is here. Yay! We will leave a little time at the end for open networking. If you can stick around, we have the platform till 3, and make some new friends. And as I was talking to Sarah, and Julie and Sue at the beginning before we jumped on, and I said, I think more now than ever, I'm really seeing a lot of people struggling. People are getting, lots of despair. Things aren't getting any better. People are sick, as I just told the ladies, I just told Sue, my sister and her husband were just diagnosed this week with COVID in the UK. And it's not until you really hear that story of someone close to you that you go, wow, okay, this thing is really, really real, and we got to be super careful. So I think that now more than ever, this is a time for us as the Pink Coach community to really pull together, to support one another, be there for one another, have those coffee dates, those tea dates. If you feel that someone is struggling or you notice something, don't be afraid to reach out. We have a beautiful community. You guys always warm my heart in the WhatsApp group with your conversations and support for one another and your events. So I just wanted to sort of throw that out there. Before we get into Sarah, a couple of dates for you. So next month, Pink Coach University. So this is the last education segment for this year. Believe it or not, isn't it crazy? December the 16th will be the next Pink Coach University at 1 o'clock, so mark your calendars. However, it will not be Pink Coach University. We are having our Client Appreciation Christmas party online. I know everyone's sick of online, but I promise you, you are going to have a good time. For those of you that was at language, for those of you that were at last month's Heart of Networking business conference and saw Michelle Hillier, Michelle Hillier will be coming along to our Christmas party on the 16th of December and doing Michelle Hillier Experience Groove segment for us to get our groove on. So very, very excited to have Michelle Hillier. December the 16th, 1 o'clock will be our Christmas party. We will be having lunch. Lunch will be delivered to you. Stay tuned. If you are a turkey lover, you'll be getting turkey dinner. It will be something that is prepared for you fresh, that you can warm up, and everybody, if you want to and feel so compelled, we will all sit together and have lunch as part of the party. I think the only thing that we can't do, talking to Leah last night, is the carol singing. I don't think it will work, but that's okay. We're going to make it fun. And I'm really happy to be able to provide you guys lunch. More to come on that note. It'll be delivered to you the night before, so very exciting. And I can't wait to celebrate the holiday season with everybody. I encourage you to dress up. I'll be sending out a note. I'll put it in the group, and I'll also send an email. We can put some Santa ears on. We can put sweaters, and we'll just have a really nice time and make the best of it and just enjoy being with one another. So that's December the 16th at 1 o'clock. If you have any events coming up, we will ask you to come. Sue and I will ask you, don't let me forget, Sue, to come to the stage at the end. And if you want to, please announce any events that you may have coming up in the next month. Go right ahead. But without further ado, I'd love to introduce Miss Sara Bibb to all of you. And I know a lot of you know Sara, some of you don't. And she told a very moving story at the Heart of Networking yesterday. She is a published author. Congratulations. I have the book. It's phenomenal. And I encourage you guys to look up Sara. And she's just a wonderful human being all around. And I remember in 2014, when I first started to come out to Durham to network at Heart of Networking, I then discovered the Company of Women. And I believe that was where I met Sara for the very first time. Sara, I think that's where we first met, was at the Company of Women. And she has, we've been in touch over the years and see each other in and out. She's just a wonderful, wonderful person. So I'm going to read you Sara's bio, and then I'm going to turn everything over to Sara. I think that as we're going in, I know that not everybody on this call has teams, but it doesn't matter whether we're thinking of hiring or it's, even a virtual assistant, contract and HR and process and risk. I think now going into next year is going to be more important for us to know now than ever before, as the face of business is changing, hence why Sara is here. Oh, and one more thing. I'm also looking for ideas for Pink Coach University topics for next year. So I have two already in mind. I'm going to be bringing Leah back at some point when I've talked to her about the date to do color personalities. So she'll join us again. It was amazing when we had that segment, and I think more importantly, it's going to be really important to have that again moving forward. As well as Arlene Hearn to do a vision board workshop. So those dates are to be determined. However, if you have a pressing topic that you think I will find the speaker. Just tell me what it is that you would like to see, or if you have somebody in mind, and I will do the rest, because obviously I want to make sure we're covering topics that are of interest to you. Okay, Sara Bibb. So Sara Bibb is the principal consultant of MKS HR Consulting. Sara is a professional and certified HR recruitment consultant. You will think that she is part of your team because she takes pride in serving her clients and getting the best possible candidates for the vacancies. Sara has a comprehensive recruitment background in a variety of industries, and it shows because she makes the process look very easy. She excels in her superior communication skills and relationship building skills with everyone she works with. Sara completed her postgraduate program in human resource management at Seneca College and obtained her certified human resources leader CHRL designation in 2009. She is a smart cookie. Sara started MKS HR after seeing that smaller size companies have the same recruitment and HR issues than larger companies do. The main difference was that smaller size companies aren't large enough to warrant having an in-house HR department, even a department of one. So Sara decided to help those companies with her 13 years of experience and founded MKS HR Consulting. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the stage over. I'm going to take myself off here. I'm going to pass it over to Sara. I'm going to take a little
Thank
seat.
you.
So very excited to have you here.
Thank you.
All right, and over to you. Please put questions if you want to answer questions during or after. Sara, it's totally up to you. If you have questions for Sara, you can raise your hand or you can put it in the Q&A, and we will see you shortly. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. If you have questions, I can answer them as we go along. I'll keep an eye on the chat portion and the Q&A. Yeah, I can see the Q&A. So I'll keep an eye on that as we go. And I will be asking for some participation as well as I go through the presentation. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Wow. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen. And I'm guessing everyone can hear me. So if you can just let me know in the chat if you can see my screen and hear me as well. Abney, perfect. Thank you. Okay, awesome. So today I'm going to talk to you about Ready, Set, Grow, Now What? So as Claudine had mentioned this is where it's going to, oh, wait, hold on. I'm trying to see how I can advance my slides. Okay, so I'm going to advance my slides this way, and I'll keep going back and forth. But today what I want to talk to you about, and I know Claudia had mentioned some of you are not at that point in your businesses where you're ready to hire staff. But the way I always like to do things is I'm a planner. So part of what I want you to learn today and take away is how you know, when you need to hire. What are some things that you need to think about? And once you know that, then I'm going to show you a proven step-by-step process that I use for my clients when I hire employees for them that you can then implement in your business when you have that need to hire. I'm going to talk about the current labor market that we're sitting in right now because it is unique, and how to think about hiring during a pandemic. Because as we probably already know, is that this pandemic isn't necessarily going to be going away anytime soon. And I want you to also learn the difference between an employee. So when I say employee today, I mean an employee on your payroll. And then you're going to learn what the difference between an independent contractor is. You're also going to know what you can and cannot do legally when you're hiring. And we're going to talk about the importance of employment agreements. So if at any point you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm going to pop on and off to make sure I can see those questions. So you think that you need to hire. Well, before you go ahead and actually hire that person, you need to look before you leap. And the reason why I put this picture into my presentation is I am a mountain biker. I love my mountain bike. I love to ride. Now, given what you see in this current picture on this slide, I wouldn't necessarily say I like to do exactly what the person in the picture is doing, but I wanted to give this as an example of look before you leap. Literally last week today, I was out riding with my husband and we were on some technical downhill trails, and I came to a jump essentially that I knew is not a jump that's rollable. So where your tire kind of, rolls over it and you can keep going downhill. This jump is one that you have to actually jump in the air. Not so much like you see here in the picture, but it was one of those things where I went over it and I shouldn't have. And I went completely over the handlebars, face planted, jammed my shoulder. I'm fine now, but it was definitely one of those things where I needed to look before I leapt. And I'm very lucky that I didn't walk away a lot more injured than I did. And so I want you to kind of think about that, is that before you need to hire, you need to do some homework first before you actually go out and actually hire that person. So what does that homework look like? It's what I call doing a staff cost benefit analysis. And so you want to think about, do you have that absolute need to hire somebody? Can you afford to pay this person? Do you have that financial ability? Do you have enough work to justify hiring them? If you do have enough work, how many hours is it going to be? Is it going to be full-time hours? Is it going to be part-time hours? Are you going to hire an employee on your payroll, or are you going to hire a subcontractor? And then in terms of the costs, what are those hard costs and soft costs? And we're going to go into those in the next slide. But benefits, thinking about what value is this person going to bring to your business in the next year or so. So looking at costs. So hard costs are just that. Those are the actual real costs that you're going to have to spend on a regular basis to hire someone and to keep that person as a staff member, be it a contractor or an employee. So in terms of an independent contractor, if you're looking at the costs of what's involved in that, you're obviously going to need the costs of what you're going to be paying them, of whatever pay rate that you've agreed upon. Outside of that pay rate, there's not a lot of hard costs that are on a regular basis for you, because a lot of the times that contractor, they have their own tools and equipment that they're using, so you don't have to supply that. They're not going to be working out of your physical office space. But in terms of employees on your payroll, a lot of what people think is, there's that minimum wage that we have to pay them. But on top of that minimum wage rate for an employee, there's your 4% vacation pay if they're a new employee and have been with you from day one up until 3 years. And then after that, it goes up to 6%. There's also the vacation time under the Employment Standards Act of Ontario. So they need 2 weeks of unpaid time that they're entitled to. There's also the statutory pay or public holidays that you have to pay, your employer portion of CPP and EI, your CRA payroll remittances as well. You need the WSIB coverage or any third-party coverage that will cover the employee if they have an accident at work. What's the office space? Do you need to start renting an office space in order to add this staff member or staff members to your company? Do you have to have a co-working space now because of it? What sort of supplies and materials? Do you need to buy them a computer or a laptop, a cell phone, a landline, access to certain softwares, training? There could be hard costs for training, but there also could be soft costs for training as well, which is your time that it's going to take in order to train that person in the role. So these are all of the costs that you have to think about, especially when you're having an employee on your payroll. When an employee is on your payroll, it's not just that base wage rate that you're paying them. In terms of the benefits that you're looking at, some of the benefits that can be when you're adding a staff member to your business is that it can increase efficiencies. So maybe this person that you're thinking of adding to your business, like Claudine had mentioned at the beginning, is maybe a virtual assistant. So they can really free up all that time you're spending on the administrative tasks in your business. Then that frees up your time and allows you to be more efficient, to get more sales, do more business development. It also can give you a benefit of more social interaction where it's not just you anymore. You're not that solopreneur. It can also increase customer service as well, if that's the type of person that you're looking to work more one-on-one with your customers. But the one thing, once you're ready to hire, and I think everybody obviously doesn't want to hire a bad person, but it probably potentially will happen. And so I want to have people put in the chat if at any point in their business, if they have either made the wrong hire, or if they have made the wrong hire, how has that impacted their business? And this hire could be an employee on your payroll or a subcontractor. So if you want to just put in the chat there, if you have experienced hiring the wrong person for your business before, and maybe what that impact looks like. And back in 2012, the National Business Resource Institute did a survey. Yeah, Sue said, unfortunately, yes. And Sue, maybe what I'm about to touch on is the impact that you felt. Yeah, Claudine has said, yep. And Heather has mentioned that, yes, you did make the wrong hire and you ended up having to do the work over again. Yeah, that's a huge impact. So the National Business Research Institute did a survey back in 2012, and I know it was quite some time ago, but the numbers were staggering, and I'm sure it's probably close to these numbers today. Yeah, Claudine also says that it was more work for you and you had to backpedal over the mistakes. And so of the employers that they had surveyed in this survey was that 66% of them said how hiring the wrong person had a negative impact on their business. Of that 66%, 37% of them said that bad hire had a negative impact on the employee morale. So the rest of the employees in that organization. I don't know if anybody on the call here has had that. And if so, you can chime in and add that in the chat. And the other portion of the survey, so 18% of the business owners that were surveyed stated that the need to fill the role quickly was the reason why a bad hire was made. And so I don't know if anyone is willing to share this on the call, but in needing to fill whatever that position was that ended up being a bad hire, did any of you kind of have that need where it was, I need someone in this position, I just need any warm bum in the seat will do, and that was part of the reason why you made that bad hire? Yeah, Leah said that. Yeah, so Sue said that was yes. Yeah. And Leah says, I've had all of this. One in particular was extremely costly and took a long time to recover from. Yeah. And it's not just the financial costs. Like right now, the cost of one bad hire can be about, 10 to 20% of that person's salary to replace an employee, be it a good employee or a bad employee. So there's that huge dollar cost involved. But there's that other non-financial costs, like Leah had said, it took a long time to recover from. Claudine had mentioned that she had to backpedal over the mistakes that person had made. Julie has mentioned that, yeah, she felt rushed and then it was a complete non-fit with the team. And unfortunately, I think that pressure on smaller business owners to fill that role quickly is felt so much more when you're a smaller business owner versus when you're a larger company. If you have a couple hundred employees, your pressure to fill that job and fill that seat is not that large. Whereas when you're small and you have a small team already, they're most likely doing the job of definitely one person and potentially a second person. And they're probably pushing you, the business owner, going, when are we going to fill the job? When are we going to fill the job? And then, like in a lot of the cases, it's sounding like that bad person comes into it and it can have a big impact. However, if we can have this step-by-step process that we can use time and time again, we're going to mitigate that risk of hiring the wrong person. And one of the things that I like to focus on when I hire employees for my clients is that I focus on making sure we get you the right employee the first time. Because when you're smaller, it's not as if you have a hiring budget, so to speak, to tap into and say, oh, well, if Jane Smith didn't work out, that's no big deal. We can easily replace her. When you're smaller, you don't have that luxury of being able to do that. So it's super critical to get it right the first time. So these 7 steps that you're seeing, these are the same 7 steps that I use when I hire employees for my clients. So the first step is creating that ideal candidate avatar. And this ideal candidate avatar is going to create your targeted job ad. Once you have the targeted job ad, you're going to post it. And once you post it up online, don't forget that you have to monitor it. Monitoring, when I think of monitoring, is looking at the number of applications that are coming in. Is there enough of them? But more importantly is, what is the quality of the applications that are coming in? Are you targeting those people that match your ideal candidate avatar? And if it doesn't match, then you're going to need to make some small tweaks. So I'm going to go through each and every step one by one. So we'll talk about the candidate avatar in a second, but I wanted to touch on something that's really important, and the fact that you're going to need 2 of these documents in your business. One is your targeted job ad, and the second is a job description. And they are 2 completely separate documents in your business. Think of your job ad as something that you use external or outside of your business, and your job description is something that is internal to your business. So your job ad is much more shorter and to the point than your job description. Your job description is thinking of that long laundry list of duties and responsibilities and qualifications. You're not going to take that huge long laundry list of duties and pop it up online, because as we all probably know, most people, especially job seekers, don't necessarily read that whole job ad. They kind of read the title, read the first couple of sentences, and then click apply. But what you want to do with your job ad is you want to treat it like that. It's an advertisement. You're marketing your company and that position to your potential job seekers to say to them, hey, this is who I am, this is what my business is, and this is why you want to come work for me. Because you are competing for job applicants or potential employees with other companies that are not only in your own industry, but more importantly, that just have similar positions that you do. So what makes you stand out than everybody else? Your job description is that internal document that you're going to use, especially once you start to get employees on your payroll, because you can then use this as your roadmap to set out the performance expectations that you have of your employees. It can basically define and document those performance standards. So, what is this idea of this ideal candidate avatar? We all know as business owners that we need to have our ideal client or our client avatar. It's essentially the same thing. So, who is that type of person that's going to fit into the role in your company? So, before you start coming up with a job description, think of, what are the must-have skills for the job? What are those skills and experience that the person needs to have in order to have that, do that job on a day-to-day basis? And then list out what are your nice to haves. So if they have that specific skill or experience, it's great, but it's not something that they need to do the job. And then most importantly is, what are your company's values? What is your mission? And what is your vision? And you want to hire to your company's values, mission, and vision. And if those potential employees that you're talking to don't necessarily match your mission and vision, they're not engaged with it, they don't match your values, then that's where the fit is not going to happen. It's better to hire more towards fit and the vision and mission than it is to skills. Anyone can be taught skills and how to do something, but you can't out teach or out change a personality. So that's where thinking about the type of position. Let's say you're hiring, you need someone to do some bookkeeping or an accounting type of position. That type of role is for someone who's very logical, numbers focused. They like things in a step by step process. So that's going to be part of your ideal candidate avatar. And so if there's a person that you're talking to that doesn't like that sort of stuff, they're not going to do well in that type of position. So once you have this ideal candidate avatar, that's what's going to drive your targeted job ad. And once you've written your targeted job ad, you now have to think of, where's your target audience? Where are your potential job seekers? Where do they search for jobs? Where are they going to be? And there's a lot of different places nowadays. Indeed, probably, as you know, is the number one job board in Canada, along with the US as well, to post positions. It's the most cost effective place to post positions as employers, much more cost effective than Monster or Workopolis. I use Indeed all of the time with my clients. LinkedIn is another place, again, depending upon if your potential job seekers are on LinkedIn, especially if you have a very specific skill set or niche type of position that you're looking for, it's a good possibility that LinkedIn is the place where you're going to want to maybe spend your job posting dollars. If you want to have a search that's a lot more local and geographic, an online job board like Swab could be something that you could look into, or localwork.ca as well. If you are wanting to hire local college or university graduates, go to the college or university job boards. Those are 9 times out of 10. I don't think I've ever had to pay for a job posting on a university or college job board. There's also the HRDC Job Bank that is also free for employers to post their positions. It's a little bit cumbersome because you have to set up an account and you do have to have an actual payroll number. So your job that you're posting on the HRDC has to be for an employee on your payroll versus a subcontractor type of position. You won't be able to post anything like that on HRDC. But once you get that account up and running and you verify that you are an employer and do actually have real legitimate jobs, then it's quite simple and easy to post up there. And again, depending upon who your target audience is, you may use a few different of these avenues, different online job boards. Maybe it might be a mix of Indeed and HRDC as an example. So I'm just going to pop in here to see if there was any questions. No, none so far, but Leah did mention too, yeah, True Colors can help. Yes, absolutely. Using a system like True Colors or another type of personality insights tool, those are huge when you can find out based on the job that you have, what's the type of person that's going to fit that position. So thank you for that, Leah. So I'm going to go back. So now you've posted your position. The job ad has been up. I usually post a job ad anywhere between 10 and 15 days and kind of let it run its course then. And so now you're going to be inundated with resumes. What do you do next? And what I do is that I do two things. The first thing is that I take a look at that ideal candidate avatar that I've created for my client, and I use all of that information along with the job description and take that and use that to review the resumes. Do those candidates have those skills, knowledge, and experience that we're looking for? And what I do is I create two piles. I create my A pile and my B pile. I'll go into in a second what the B pile is and why I use it. But essentially, my A pile is anybody that's 80% or more has those skills and experience, knowledge, and qualifications that are needed for the job. My B pile are candidates that have about 60% and above matching for those knowledge and experience that we're looking for. So before I go into the next step after the resume review, I wanted to touch on the current labor market and how to think about hiring in a pandemic. And I wanted to just take a little pulse. If anyone here on the call, have you guys ever, like, have you posted for any types of positions lately? Or do you know of anybody that's actively searching in the job market? Have you kind of heard of what the labor market is like? If you want to put that into the chat. And I did see a question come in. So Desiree said, should you ask for a specific way to receive the examples via email? Yeah, I would, the easiest way to receive the emails is by email. If you use Indeed and set up an employer account, which is a free account to set up, you essentially receive with Indeed the resumes to your email, or you can actually go into their back end of the system where you actually can view the applications. You can make notes on them. If you want to send rejection emails, you can move them through different parts of the hiring process. And then there was another question: how much does it cost to have your firm help us vet applications? I'll talk to that a little bit at the end. And Sue says, is Indeed the best place to post for remote workers in Canada? That's a good question. So what Indeed has done right now, and this is going to be a nice little segue into the current labor market, is they ask you, is the position that you're posting a temporary remote type of a position, or is it a permanent remote? And so you can choose that. But I would say, if you are looking for a remote position, you could use Indeed, but there are other online job boards, Sue, that you could use. But what I would suggest, if you're an employer posting a job and you either have it be remote on a temporary basis, until you can physically get back into your workplace, or it's a permanently remote job, put that in the job posting and put it as high up as you can. And so Leah says, I have a client who is searching, and she says it's very difficult because there are so many applicants. I think you really have to stand out more than ever. And what Leah said is exactly kind of the labor market that's out there right now. So pre-COVID, our labor market was a very candidate-driven labor market. There was not a lot of active job seekers. I think pre-COVID, our unemployment rate was probably the lowest it has been in Canada, probably in the last 30 years. I think it was in and around like 6.5%. And now, obviously, as of March, when COVID hit, I think our unemployment rate, and I don't know the exact rate right now, but we're probably easily sitting at like maybe 13 or anywhere between 15%. And then Julie says her husband owns a contracting firm and is desperate to hire but cannot have qualified help. Yeah, it's to kind of describe the current labor market. It's hard for me to put into words, because part of it is now a little bit of an employer-driven market, in the sense that your pool of active job seekers is much bigger than before. So that's where, like Leah had commented, is that there's a lot more applicants. So from a job seeker perspective, you really have to make yourself stand out. I recently filled an executive assistant position for a client, and I had more resumes than I have seen in the last probably 4 years. Again, partly because previous to COVID, it was a pure candidate driven market. The candidates were really being able to be picky and choosy because there wasn't a lot of active job seekers out there. But now employers can be a little bit more picky and choosy, and that's because there's a lot of good quality applicants. And that's the one thing that I noticed immediately when I was searching for this executive assistant position. Not only did I have many more resumes in terms of quantity, I had a lot more quality of applicants. So normally in past labor markets, you'll have, hundreds upon hundreds of resumes. But, out of, let's say, those 200 resumes, maybe 50 are those applicants that are truly a fit for the job. Whereas now with this position I helped this client fill, I had I probably had close to 75, 90 resumes that were good quality, really good, really good candidates. So it made my job a little bit trickier in terms of going through those resumes. So from a job seeker standpoint, yes, you need to make sure that you and stand out above all of the other applicants. But from an employer perspective, you are going to need to spend a little bit more time going through those resumes, but you also need to know exactly what you want. So you can't kind of go post a position and not have a good idea of who it is that you're looking for, what the job does. You need to know what that is crystal clear before you get it posted. And make sure you're clear and concise about that all the way through the hiring process. And the other thing is that, and I think this is true of any labor market, regardless if it's an employer driven or a candidate driven market, don't wait too long. Even though for employers right now, there's good a lot of good applicants to choose from, those top talent, those rock stars, they're still going to get snapped up, and they're going to get snapped up quickly, especially because there are people that are out of work. So they will kind of take the first thing that comes. So as an employer, never wait on a really good, strong, stellar applicant, because they will get eaten up by somebody else who doesn't wait on them. And then the one thing you want to keep in mind right now during the pandemic is in your conversations with job seekers, especially once you get to the interview stages, is make sure you're communicating how you're keeping your employees safe from COVID-19. So yes, there's a lot of job seekers out there, but there's also a lot of job seekers that they want to know what you're doing to keep your employees safe. So you're really going to have to communicate that. If you can communicate it with just a couple of lines in the job ad, that's perfect. But definitely communicate that up front when you're talking to people. So now that you've got your resumes, you have your A pile, you have your B pile, what I think a lot of business owners might tend to do at this point in the process is they will set up a face-to-face interview. And this is where I'm going to say you're going to hold off on that face-to-face interview stage, and you're going to do what I call an initial phone screen. And this is going to save you tons and tons of time. So let's say you go through your resumes, you say, okay, I want to meet with these 3 candidates. On average, a face-to-face interview, and at this point, you're going to be doing Zoom interviews, is about an hour long. So you schedule 3 hours out of your day. So basically, either a full morning or a full afternoon to speak with 3 people. You meet the first person, and right within the first 5 minutes, this person is not the person for the job. They don't have the skills you're looking for. They don't fit. The next person that you interview is okay. They're so-so, but they weren't like knock your socks off or anything like that. The third person that you meet is exactly the same as the first. They are just not the person you are looking for. So at this point, you've spent about 3 hours out of your day, and you have only one person, and that one person isn't that great either. So you kind of have to go back to the drawing board. But if you were to do the initial phone screen before the face-to-face interviews, you're only going to be spending probably just over an hour, let's say an hour and 10 minutes of your time. And what you're doing is, for one job opening, ideally you want to be talking to about 7 to 10 applicants. So 10, no more than 12 minutes on this initial phone screen. 10 minutes per phone call, that's 70 minutes right there if you're talking to 7 people, versus 3 hours only talking to 3 people. And when you're doing this initial phone screen, right off the bat, you're going to get a very good indication of what your communication skills are like. And you're going to ask them very simple questions. You know, why did you apply for this position? Is a really good one, because then you can get an idea of, you know, how interested are they in working for your company? Are you one of the 300 places that they sent their resume to? Ask them what they're looking for in the next job that they take. So based on that answer, you're going to have a good idea of whether or not they fit your company, the industry that you work in, and the type of position that you're hiring. And then ask them, you know, a career related question. You know, where do you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years? And based on that, how do you think this job might help you in getting to that point in your career? And again, a question like that is going to allow you to determine whether or not there's that fit. So once you've gone through these initial phone screens, then you're going to say to yourself, okay, I have 4 people that are worth my face to face time. They're worth that hour to meet with them. And so that's when you do the face to face interview step. Now, because of COVID, and if you're not actually physically working out of your office, you may not be able to do that face-to-face interview. And if you can't do that in-person interview, the next best thing is a video type of a platform like a Zoom or a Microsoft Teams. And the reason why you want to do that face-to-face is because you need to see kind of their body language, how they present themselves. I've heard of instances where candidates are going on these interviews on Zoom, and you know, sometimes they will show up in either maybe their pajamas or something that you wouldn't show up into a face-to-face interview with. And so in this face-to-face interview, you're going to be scheduling, again, for one job opening, 3, no more than 4 applicants. Because at this stage of the game, you should be able to tell, but you know, decide between 3, no more than 4 people who you're going to hire for the position. Usually, if you have that 4th person in there, it's because you've talked to really 2 strong candidates and you can't necessarily tell over the phone who is maybe the stronger candidate, but you'll be able to assess that in the face to face interview. And so, when you're in the face to face interview, you're going to ask them the exact same set of questions for all of the candidates that you're interviewing. Don't ask them different sets of questions, because then that can be seen as bias. And what the interview questions you're going to ask are what I call behavior-based interview questions. And so all that means is that the question is designed in such a way that it forces the applicant to use a specific example from their past or current job experience to answer the question. And this will allow you to assess if they actually have those skills and experience. And how you prepare those candidates to answer those types of questions is you're going to let them know ahead of time when you book these interviews, and let them know that you're going to be asking them questions where you want them to use their past job experience to answer the question, and you want them to be specific. And sometimes what happens in these interviews is that candidates will give you a very high level, you know, 3 sentences, and answer the question that way. They won't give you those specific details. And that's usually for one of 2 reasons. One reason, and this is usually kind of 9 times out of 10, is that they're just nervous. They're nervous about being in that interview process. They don't necessarily, it might be their first interview in a long time, or it might be their first interview ever. So if that's the case, give them a couple of probes. Say, well, thanks for answering that question, Jane, but can you give me a specific example of when you did XYZ? And if you've kind of probed them to, I do no more than 3 probes, and they still don't give you that specific answer, that's more likely because they've never actually done what you're asking them in the question. So then it kind of shows that they don't necessarily have those skills and experience that they've said they've had, which is what they put on their resume. And the other thing you have to remember when you get to the face-to-face interview stage is prepare yourself as the person doing the interviews. Block off that time in your schedule. Even if you're doing a Zoom call and you're not able to do a one-on-one, try to limit the number of distractions. Turn your phone off. That way there's no dings or bells or whistles. And then, maybe close off your email in its entirety. That way there's no distractions, because that sometimes can make some people a little bit unnerving. So once you've done the face-to-face interview and you know who you want to select as your final candidate, you're then going to go through the reference check process, where you're going to call their employment references. So ideally, you want to ask for 2 to 3 employment references. And employment references are their previous manager or previous supervisors. Now, again, depending upon your candidate, if it's someone that's just a recent graduate out of college or university, they might not have 3 employment references. So then maybe you can ask for 2 and then a professional reference, let's say from a college or university professor, or a close personal friend. Once the reference checks are completed, you're then going to move to the offer of employment stage. So that's when you're going to call up the final candidate and make a verbal offer of employment. So you'll talk to them over the phone and say, your checks are all clear. I want to offer you the position of administrative assistant. I'm thinking your start date is going to be this date. I'm going to offer you this salary. And after that phone call, you're then going to follow up that phone call with an email that has a copy of the employment contract along with the rest of their new hire paperwork. Now, in that phone call, you may go through some negotiations in terms of salary, as an example, or what works in terms of their start date. But regardless of whatever happens in that verbal offer, always follow it up with the email with a contract and their new hire paperwork. New hire paperwork is basically just the standard tax forms that they have to fill out if it's an employee on payroll. If it's a subcontractor, you're really just going to be sending out that service agreement or independent subcontractor agreement. For an employee on payroll, also send them what's called a new hire information form. So it has their name, address, emergency contact information, SIN number, things like that. If at any point in the conversation that you're having with your potential job applicant, because a lot of times when candidates are applying, there's lots of questions, around, are you legally able to work in Canada? At some point in the conversation, it's going to come up that maybe this person is here on a work permit. Just as an FYI, if none of you on the call have ever known this before, if there is a SIN number that starts with 9, that means it's a temporary SIN number. So that person would be here in Canada on some sort of a work permit or a student work permit. So if that's the case, make sure that you get a copy of that work permit, because you will need to have that for your employee records. Employment agreements or contracts. It is super, 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 super important, even if you have an independent contractor, that there is an agreement, a written agreement that is signed between both parties. Verbal agreements are legally binding. However, if anything goes south, and especially if it's an employee on payroll, that employment contract or employment agreement is the leg that you're going to stand on. It's your proof. So even if you're hiring an employee on payroll and you're only going to be hiring them for 3 months, or if you have a seasonal business and you're only going to be hiring them, let's say from May until the end of October or something like that, still have them sign an employment agreement. Because if anything goes south, most arbitrators and most court judges will side with the employee versus the employer. There are times when it goes in the employer's favor, but those instances are where the employer has done their due diligence. They've done their homework. They've documented what they need to document. One HR workshop I did many months ago, they were talking about the appointments of contracts and getting to document basically everything that happens to an employee. So there was a specific case, I can't remember the name of the employee versus the company, but essentially the case was they had a VP of sales that they decided to terminate the employment relationship with. So they terminated this VP of sales, and this person had been with the company for 20 years. He started as an entry level frontline type of employee. So when they terminated his employment relationship, they gave him a termination package that was based on his original contract that he signed 20 years ago. They did not take into account the fact that he had climbed the ladder, had salary increases over those 20 years. They never documented any of that. And so when he received his termination package, he went back, got a lawyer, and the employer ended up paying more than what they had to have paid if they would have given him exactly what was owed. And that was because they didn't get him to sign updated contracts as he went through and essentially moved up the corporate ladder. So that's why it's super important to always have agreements in place. A standard employment contract really has your company name and address on it, the employee's first name, last name, address, and then the standard clauses are obviously their start date, the title of their position, who they report to, their base wage rate, be if it's per hour or per year, their vacation entitlement. So if you don't have a vacation policy that's above and beyond employment standards in Ontario or whatever your local jurisdiction is, then you would mention that they get the vacation entitlement based on employment standards. If there's any health benefits or any kind of other benefits that you give to your employees, you would put that into the contract. Having a probationary period of 3 months is a good thing to have in an employment contract. And then also, and a lot of this has come to light because of COVID, have a temporary layoff clause. Now, what I'm talking about here is those employment contracts for employees on your payroll. So, for your temporary layoff clause, back in March, when we went into full lockdown and there was businesses all across Canada, all across Ontario that were having to temporarily lay off their employees. The way the legislation works in Ontario, and it is a little bit different from province to province, and outside of Canada, I'm not well versed enough to know the employment law outside of Canada. But specifically in Ontario, the way it works is you need to have a temporary layoff clause in an employment agreement. And if you do not have that layoff clause in an employee agreement and you do lay your employees off, it can be seen as constructive dismissal. Constructive dismissal is this idea that the employer has made a fundamental change in the employment conditions that were agreed upon at the time of hire. So laying someone off it could be seen as a fundamental change. So there was a lot of employers back in March where they could have, when they did lay off their employees and they didn't have that temporary layoff clause in an employment agreement, they could be in a position of constructive dismissal. Now, because it was so far reaching and everybody across Ontario was doing this, the likelihood of it being seen as constructive dismissal is relatively low. It's hard to tell what that looks like right now because there have been some employees that have actually gone back and essentially lawyered up and are going back to say that they were constructively dismissed back in March. But those cases I don't even think have hit any sort of arbitration or court system yet. So I don't know kind of what that looks like now. But if, especially those of you on the call that haven't hired employees yet and are going to be doing it in the future, have that temporary layoff clause in your contract, along with a termination clause as well, that kind of ties them to the notice that they would need under the Employment Standards Act of Ontario. Now, the next part is what I have on the slide here, which is called TBNTs. And I call them the thanks, but no thanks. And essentially what that means is you're going to be getting back to those candidates that you did not select for the position. So anybody you have talked to over the telephone, or you've met in person or on Zoom, you need to pick up the phone and call them back and say, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me or come in to see me, but we've moved forward with another candidate for the position. And the reason why you want to do this is it's just professional courtesy. They've taken the time out of their day to talk to you, come to your office, or taken an hour on a Zoom call. It's just something nice to do. And always think of it in the lens that these potential employees could be potential employees down the road, or they could be potential customers of your business at some point. And as we all know, when people have bad experiences, it's those bad experiences that they share on social media. So if you can try to avoid something like that, this is when it's super key to have those. The last part that I want you to think about is onboarding and integrating that new person into your company. And this holds true for employees on payroll or subcontractors. So where a lot of businesses fall short is they think that once someone has said yes and signed the agreement, that their job is done. The hiring process is done, yes, but your job is really never done as a business owner. And I think everybody on the call can agree with me on this. But once you've hired that person, you need to onboard them properly and you need to integrate them into your company. And Claudine, when Claudine, before she introduced me, she was talking about that little kind of Christmas social that she was setting up for you and the things that you were doing and how you guys might get a bit of a turkey dinner sent to your house and you might, be able to sit down together as a group and have that kind of Christmas party, be it a virtual party. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about here when you're onboarding that person. Think of that new hire as someone who does the only thing that they know at this point is they know who their boss is, when their start date is, and what their job title is. Outside of that, they don't know anything about you and your company. So setting up that relationship with this new person and setting it up correctly from day one is super important, and it really shows that you value your employees, you value your team members, you value them as people, as human beings, as opposed to just a means to an end. So simple things that you can do is, having their technology set up ahead of day one. Make sure their email is working. If they have a laptop that's, like company property, make sure that it is working from day one. Whatever softwares and access to programs that they need, it's literally sitting on that computer so they can start going through things from day one. Send out a new hire welcome announcement, be it that new hire welcome announcement to the rest of your team, even if your team is a team of subcontractors, or to your customers, especially if that new hire is going to be dealing with your customers a lot more one-on-one. Introduce that person. And if you have their email set up ahead of time, they're going to get that as their first email when they open it up on their first day. And how nice would it be to get an email like that? And like I said before, with that targeted job ad, you're marketing your company as that employer of choice. And this whole idea of integrating your people into the rest of your company, especially with the younger generations, I have read studies that I can't remember what the exact stat is, but with millennials, if the end of their first it's the end of their first day. If their end of their first day of work goes really, really badly, I think it said 70% of millennials will start looking for another job. And this is at the end of day one. And I have heard of instances where employees will walk into the front reception and the receptionist will have no idea that Joe Smith is there and is a new employee and is starting that day. Again, you want to set that relationship up on the right foot. So that's the end of kind of the process. Now, in terms of some rules and regulations, what can you say or not say in the hiring process? Or what can you do or not do? As you all know, there's the Ontario Human Rights Code. there's 16 protected grounds that you cannot discriminate against. Interview questions, those are pretty straightforward. You obviously cannot ask a candidate, are you married? Do you plan on getting married? Do you have any children? There have been times where I have heard of instances of where things like that have actually been asked. Where it can get a little bit more tricky is around the job ad. And just be mindful of how you write your job ad. So let's say you write something along the lines of, the ideal person for this type of position could be, have a more mature profile. It could be seen as age discrimination. So you have to be kind of mindful of this when you're writing it. And the reason why I say this is because if your company, if you kind of open the door or get the foot in the door of, maybe having a potential human rights claim come up against you, if that foot is in the door, it's going to open up that door completely and they're going to look at your entire business. So be mindful of these sort of things when you're writing your job ads. There is instances where you can actually legally discriminate, and that's what's called a bona fide occupational requirement. Typically, bona fide occupational requirements are in industries like manufacturing, construction, skilled trades. And those are instances where you can ask things or have things in the job ad, such as you need to be able to lift up to 50 pounds worth of weight regularly through your 8-hour or 12-hour shift, as an example. And that's because in order to do that particular either manufacturing job or construction job, you need to be able to actually lift 50 pounds worth of weight, as an example. So those are instances where you can, like I said, legally discriminate. But typically in your professional types of positions, customer service, admin, kind of, I guess, more, like I said, professional types of positions, the likelihood of those bona fide occupational requirements is very, very low. So before we get into, sorry about the flipping around, before we get into this idea of employee versus subcontractor, I just wanted to pop into the chat to see if there's any questions. So Lori says that, yep, she has friends who have quit after week 1. Claudine says, must love the color pink. Yeah, I guess, yeah, color. So there's quite a few questions in the Q&A. And Sue says, can you help us hire contractors? Yep, I've helped some people do hire subcontractors as part of their business versus how do we go about drawing a contract? Are there customizable contracts available anyway? Or is it better to get a contract drawn by a lawyer? So Desiree, if you've ever been on a workshop where there's a lawyer or a lawyer has asked you, the answer is always depends. And I am going to give the same answer of it depends. If you're getting a contract, if it's an independent contractor agreement, definitely get it reviewed by a legal professional for sure. And we'll get into a little bit why that's going to be necessary when we talk about employees versus subcontractors. But in terms of employment contracts for employees that are on your payroll, the reason why I say it depends is that if it's a frontline entry level type of a position, I can help you draw up a contract like that. But if you are hiring a more kind of manager, senior manager, director level type of position, again, I can help you with that. But what I would also then suggest you do is get a set of legal eyes on it, because when you are hiring at that manager, senior manager, and especially if you get up into the C-suite type of positions, those employment contracts, those are very, very specific, and you want to have some really good clauses in there that protect the business owner, because at the end of the day, from an employer perspective, the employment contract is that document that protects you, the business owner. And so when you get into the senior positions, you're going to have some very specific like termination clauses, for example. It's going to be very different than your entry level, but I can help with both. And then what I tend to do for clients who need those contracts that are for more senior positions, I've partnered with an employment lawyer, and I can help kind of facilitate that review from an employment lawyer standpoint. And then Sue asks, is it it's important for me to hire local, but concerned about breaking the rules? So Sue, are you wanting to know if you can ask where they live? I think that's what you're asking. Either type it in the chat or in the Q&A. Okay, yeah. So yeah, see, you can't, I mean, you can't out, you can't actually, I wouldn't necessarily, if you're talking to a candidate, I wouldn't say, do you live in Oshawa? If you're concerned about them getting, so you want to hire people in Ontario, yeah, you can say, you know, are you legally able to work in Ontario? You can say that, or you can even say, you know, this company is based in Ontario. Do you have the ability to get to my place of employment using a reasonable means of transportation? Yeah, you kind of have to, you can't be super direct about it, but you have to be a little bit creative about it. Yeah, because it's, the location isn't necessarily one of the protected grounds under the human rights, but you also want to make sure that you're not seen as favoring someone. But it's not uncommon for companies to want to hire local employees, so that's good. So I'm just going to go through the questions. So there was one question I didn't touch on. I think Desiree, you had asked it, and you said, how much does it cost to have your firm help us vet applications? So what I do in terms of how I price my services, if it's something where I'm taking on pretty much the whole hiring process, I have packages for my services, and those packages kind of have different levels in terms of the services that I provide. So obviously the highest end package would be, you know, creating that avatar for you, creating the job ad, screening all the resumes, doing in-depth phone interviews, and really vetting those people before you see them on a one-on-one basis, doing the reference checks. But if it's something where you need someone as like an extra pair of hands to review resumes or just do in-depth phone interviews, that's another service that I provide. I can't give you kind of an exact dollar amount on the call here because I would need to know the ins and outs of the position. But in terms of my ability to do that, yes, that is a service that I do offer. Okay, so I have, so I've answered everybody's questions in the Q&A. So I'm going to go back and we're going to get into this idea of employee versus subcontractor. So like I mentioned in the beginning, when you're looking at, you have a need to hire someone, to add someone to your team. And maybe in that analysis, you've decided, you know what, I don't have enough hours to warrant it being an employee on my payroll, and I'm at that point in my business where I do need to start to add to my business, but to me, I'm not going to have enough hours to warrant, having to afford, the CRA payroll remittances, WSIB, things like that. So that's when you're going to go down that road of a subcontractor. And so you want to know the difference between the two. And what I want to talk about is that you want to know employee versus subcontractor from a CRA perspective. And then we're also going to talk about employee versus subcontractor from an employment standards, specifically in Ontario, because this is something not a lot of people now know is new, and it's not really new anymore because this came into effect under the employment standards back in November of 2017. So like 3 years ago. So from a CRA standpoint, how they look at the employer employee relationship or employer and subcontractor relationship is it's all based on the employment status. And they look at it um, with two steps. They look at, is it a contract of service or is it a contract for services? A contract for services is that employer subcontractor relationship where you are hiring the subcontractor to provide, in my case, human resources services, recruitment services. A contract of service would be you're hiring that person as an employee on your payroll. And the next thing they look at is the intent of the parties. And so a lot of how the CRA will take a look at is that intent of the parties is really seen based on the agreement that's made between both parties. So if you look at the employment contract and the way that it's drawn up and the clauses and terms and conditions that are in there, it's that contract of service. Whereas an independent contractor agreement or a service agreement, which is a contract for services, the intent is that it's a business relationship. And so what the CRA does is they have this test and that they look at all of these areas. And based on these areas, they then determine if it's a contractor or an employee relationship. So control, what they look at in that aspect is that who has control of the relationship? Who is determining what work is to be done, when it's to be done, and how it's to be done? If the contractor is the person that's making that determination, then it is a contractor relationship. Because when you have an employee on your payroll, as their employer, you tell them, okay, I'm hiring you as my executive assistant. You're going to be in the office from Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. This is what you're going to do, and this is how much I'm going to pay you for it. When it's a subcontractor, there's a little bit more control on the subcontractor side. You know, when I work for my clients, I determine the days of the week that I work and work on the hiring of that person for my client. Tools and equipment. In an employer-employee relationship, it's the employer that's supplying the tools and equipment. It's the company's laptop, the company's cell phone that's being used in order for that person to do the job. When a contractor comes into place, it's typically their tools and equipment, their own equipment that they've bought themselves. They have an insurance on it. They maintain that insurance. Let's say, let's say it's like photography equipment. They obviously have some sort of insurance on it. They maintain the insurance. They maintain the maintenance of the actual equipment itself. They need to replace it. They need to update the software, things like that. The only area where it gets unique in terms of the business owner supplying the tools and equipment is if you're in kind of if you're a physiotherapist, a chiropractor, or a registered massage therapist. In those specific industries, typically the business owner will supply some of the tools and equipment. So they'll supply the table for the RMT to do their services off of. But it's well known out there that in that industry, the tools and equipment are supplied by the business owner. But typically that subcontractor, be it the chiropractor or the physiotherapist, they're the ones that are saying, okay, these are the days and times of the week that I'm available to provide these services. Subcontracting or hiring assistants. An employee does not have the ability to hire somebody else to do their job. They can't come in and say to their employer, okay, so you've hired me to be your executive assistant, but I'm going to hire someone else and subcontract someone else to do my job that you hired for me. It just doesn't work that way. As a subcontractor, though, for me as an example, I can hire other subcontractors to do the services that I'm providing to my client. I have that ability. Financial risk or opportunity for profit. Um, for a contractor, there's a much more higher level of financial risk. So in the sense, let's say that contractor does not come through on the services that they agreed that they would give to their clients. Their whole entire business could be decimated and lost. Their financial risk is greater. So that's another way to determine it. And responsibility for investment in management, it's the contractor that's making the investment into their business. They're managing it. The way the CRA looks at the relationship, for them, the biggest thing is that the contractor is someone else who is a legitimate business. They are another business providing services. So if you're looking to hire a subcontractor for your business, make sure that when you're going through kind of your vetting process is that this potential subcontractor is another business owner just like you are. Do they have other clients that they serve? Ask for references from clients that they've worked with. That's completely fine to ask for that. And the reason why you want to make sure that this subcontractor is an actual subcontractor is because if you get audited by the CRA and they determine that it is not a subcontractor relationship, you, the business owner, are on the hook for back CRA payroll remittances for that subcontractor who is now an employee. And you're also on the hook for the back income taxes that that subcontractor should have been claiming on their income taxes. And then now, this newest thing is the employee versus subcontractor from an employment standards standpoint. So you have the CRA doing an audit of you, and if they find that you're in the wrong, you're on the hook from a CRA perspective, but you're then also on the hook from the Ministry of Labor standpoint. So if you remember 3 years back, when Bill 148 was coming into play in Ontario. So if there's anyone on this call that's outside of Ontario, Avni, I know you're in Kenya, I believe Claudine said. So you may or may not remember this, and it most likely doesn't apply to you. But Bill 148 was some major changes in employment legislation in Ontario. And probably, as a lot of the business owners on this call know, personal emergency leave days was one of the big ones. The big, huge increase in minimum wage. One of the things that was added to Bill 148 that kind of went under the radar was this idea from an employment legislation standpoint, what's an employee, what's a subcontractor? And when the Ford government came into power in January of 2018, the Ford government repealed back a lot of what was in Bill 148. So the personal emergency leave days was one of those things that the Ford government repealed back. They did not change anything for the employee versus subcontractor. This idea of employee versus subcontractor has been in the Employment Ontario Standards legislation, but what's new now is that it's an enforceable offense under the ESA. So like I said before, you're on the hook with the CRA potentially, and you're also on the hook with the Ministry of Labor if they fine you. And they haven't, based on the new legislation, they haven't really said how far back they would look at the relationship. There's never really been any clarification for that. And they don't have a test set up in the same way that the CRA does. But just know that it's an enforceable offense. Even though they don't have the same test like the CRA has, the key from an employment standards legislation perspective is that for them, it's who has control over that relationship. That's what they really look at when they're looking at these specific cases is the business owner determining the work that's being done? Are they saying you're going to do XYZ on these days of week? for these hours during those days of a week, and then they're determining that pay rate. It's really that who has the control over the relationship. That's the big piece for the Ministry of Labor, and that's what they look at. So just be aware of that. So when you are looking to hire a subcontractor, you can go through a lot of the process that I went through earlier. The reference checks would just be reference checks from previous clients that they've worked with, but definitely do your due diligence and do make sure that they are a true subcontractor. The reason why Bill 148, why they made it an enforceable offense under the ESA, is that there are a lot of situations out there, more so the larger companies versus your smaller companies, where you have a contractor. And I've been employed by some companies where they, that it looks like an employee, walks like an employee, but they still say that they're a contractor. They have their own desk at the company's headquarters. They have their own, company email, a company phone, all of that sort of stuff. So you have to just keep that in mind when you're hiring for subcontractors. And so that's the end of my presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing and then see if there's any questions. I'm going to pop in the Q&A. So Sue asks, does MKS HR Consulting have a specialty in sector? So I do. I specialize, the clients that I work with are in the professional services industry, in terms of accounting, finance, IT, and healthcare. And then I also have clients that are in the construction and skilled trades area. Those are typically kind of the areas that I work in. But the main thing that I do is that I help those smaller, medium-sized companies add that HR structure into their business. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to take them. Lisa, that's a great question. So Lisa asks, what are the requirements for subcontractors such as WSIB or insurance requirements? So for WSIB with subcontractors, if it's within the construction industry or landscape industry, what you really, I'm trying to remember, it has a very specific name and it's literally on the tip of my tongue, Lisa. you may or may not be aware of it. But with like subcontractors, construction companies, when they have their subcontractors or the construction workers that they have that are subcontractors, they don't have to do anything from a WSIB from an employer standpoint, but that subcontractor has to have, it's called a clearance certificate. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I believe it's called a WSIB clearance certificate. And essentially what that is that if that construction worker who's a subcontractor has an accident on the company's work site, it's the subcontractor that's paying the WSIB to cover them. But if it's a subcontractor, such as myself, it depends upon the industry. If you're a company where you're in the construction industry, definitely make sure any subcontractors that you have those WSIB clearance certificates. And either they may have WSIB coverage or they have coverage through a third-party provider. So an insurance company that will provide coverage if they get hurt. I can't remember what the insurance term is, but that kind of coverage. So so you're using contractors for your company. So what do your contractors do, Lisa? So if you can let me know in the chat box, like what your contractors do, that would be helpful. And then I can kind of answer your question more specifically. But, let's say you're looking to hire a subcontractor as a virtual assistant. You don't have to have WSIB coverage for that subcontractor. Health and wellness, they are supplying services to my customers. Health and wellness. So health and wellness, are they kind of like massage? Yeah, you could book a call. Yeah, you can absolutely book a call with me. And one of the things, and I'm going to do this now, because if I don't do it now, I will forget it. I'm going to pop in a link into the chat, and this is for everyone on the call. So if you click on that link, and you enter in your name and email address. So in exchange for your name and email address, I'll be totally transparent, because you guys can get on my email list then. I've created a nice little guide for you on pretty much everything that we talked about today. And there's just some also extras in there. So there's the guide to reviewing resumes, a phone interview guide, a reference check guide. So when I do the employment reference checks for my clients, there's actually the same list of questions that I use for my clients. So you can access that guide by clicking the link and then filling your information out there. So definitely, yeah, Lisa, I'll also pop in the chat a link to, you can book some time with me. And then Lisa, if you wanted to book some time with me, we can do it that way.
Brilliant. What a nice giveaway. I've already got mine open here and I'm going to fill it out shortly. That's a huge value. Thank you so much. I have so many notes. I'm like, wow, I can see.
You're welcome.
Excellent.
Yeah, and if anyone wants the slide deck, I'm happy to share the slide deck with you too. I can email that to you, Claudine, if you wanted to send it. And if anybody that wasn't able to make today's call, you can send the slide deck to them too. And then
that's great. Thank you so much. And once the recording is done, I'll make sure that you have a copy of the recording. Sue always kindly sends us the recording. And there's a lot of people that couldn't be here today that I know wanted to watch your presentation. So we will be sharing that as well. So that was excellent. And I have to say, there's so many things things have changed a lot. One piece when we talked about the layoff clause and, the termination clause, that's a new one for me completely. I'm like, but
yes. Well, the layoff has always been there.
Yeah.
But because of COVID, not a lot of employers knew about it. And it's really kind of come to light, and it's made a lot of employers go, oh, I didn't even know that. And like I said, there are some cases out there where employees have taken some employers and they've said, no, you've actually constructively dismissed me. What will be interesting though too, and this was something that's changed ever since COVID, is there was the layoff in March, but then there was the IDLE, the IDEL, the infectious disease emergency leave. So there's that piece as well. So those that were kind of laid off in March, they kind of were retroactively moved over to this IDLE. So it
to change.
So much is changing, and so much is still going to change. So if anybody on the call has questions about that, because there have been some temporary changes to the Employment Standards Act in Ontario. And there's dates literally changing all of the time. IDLE was supposed to end September 4th, and then it was, oh no, wait, let's extend it. I think it was going to be extended until November or something.
Well, this is why we have you, because we just can't rely on knowledge alone or assumptions, and especially going into next year, risk is going to be a huge piece of all of our businesses. So I thank you. This was excellent information. It's an absolute pleasure on behalf of myself and everybody on the call. Thank you so very much. And please book a call with Sarah if you have questions for her. This is excellent information. I'm just like, oh, my head is full because some digesting to do. It's great. So if anybody has, does anybody have an event that they would like to announce? And you can raise your hand and Sue will bring you to the stage quickly. If anybody has any events coming up that they would like to announce, raise your hand, or you can actually unmute yourself and take off your camera and come to the stage. Oh, I see one victim here, Miss Hannah.
Just wait for my camera to click on. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you totally fine.
All right, I'll just go without the camera. That's fine.
No, I want to see you. Where are you?
It's coming. It's thinking about it.
Yeah. Oh, Robin. Okay. Anybody else on here that has an event coming up? Arlene, what about you, Arlene? Don't you have another event? Miss Arlene Hearn. Arlene. Oh, there
Yes.
she's
Yeah.
coming
Can
now.
you? Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, double M. Okay, so let's go with Hannah was up first. So everyone can mute themselves until, yep, perfect. Okay, Hannah, what do you
Hi
have on the
there.
go?
Okay, so for those that don't know me, my name's Hannah, and I'm a mortgage agent here in Ontario, Avni. I'm in Ontario, and we're running our final webinar of the year is on December 3rd at 10 a.m. And it's all about buying a home. So 5 steps to buying a home, whether it's your first home or your next home. Because sometimes we buy one home and we forget the process. I'm going over everything in that hour, all the important things you need to know. So I'll post the Google form registration link in the. Thanks, Coach.
Hey, thanks, Hannah. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, Miss LT.
I actually was not going to talk about my event, and then I didn't realize Robin was on the call, so she's probably going to mention it. But we have tomorrow's Hub Chat, and actually Marlene is going to be featured. And it's a great little networking 2 hours, bring your lunch, and you have opportunity to talk about your business for 10 minutes. And the feature, who tomorrow is Marlene, I believe they talk for half an hour. And it's been really great getting to know people's businesses. So I just wanted to, I think there's 2 spots left, but anyway, but that was it.
Thank you. Thanks, Lisa. Okay, Arlene.
Okay. Hello, everybody. So I offered 2 dates for the Vision Workshop. And so today was a beautiful group with Heather and Julie joining us. So tomorrow I've got 2 people on. So I'll post the link to the Facebook event in the chat. If you can make it, it's at 6 o'clock tomorrow evening. Please pop on.
Thank you. Thanks, Arlene. Okay, Marla. Marla Mack.
Hello, everybody. Hugging hands. I'm Marla Mack. On Friday, I am hosting what is called the Quantum Alignment Show, and my episode is "Are You Getting Paid for Your Genius?" So I'm talking about how you can recognize your genius and bring that into your business for more soul satisfaction and income success. And it's been proven that entrepreneurs that focus on their genius in their business actually have higher profits. So it is 2 o'clock Eastern time I will post the Zoom link in the chat, or you can join in on the Human Design for Everyone Facebook page. Thank you.
Thank you. Double M.
Hello, everyone. Of course, Claudine and I do the Next Level Networking Workshop. That's coming up on December the 9th, Wednesday morning, December the 9th. That is free to all VIP Heart of Networking members. So if you're a member, you just need to register for that. Small charge if you're not a member. And then December 15th is our year-end wrap-up at Heart of Networking. So that'll be a special meeting, the usual time, 9:30 till noon. And I see Sue's on here to announce our other event, so I'll leave that one to her.
Okay, great. Thank you. Robin.
Hello, everyone. Marla, I just wanted to say that I'm coming to your event. That sounds so amazing, and I can't wait for that. On Thursday, tomorrow, we're having Hub Chat, and Marlene Marco is our featured speaker. And so, yes, she'll be speaking about, she'll be representing herself and talking to all of us, inspiring us for 30 minutes. And I do have 2 spots left. So you have, it's usually 10 minutes, but it's going to be 5 minutes for each person, because we do have 20 people coming, because what we're doing is we are raising donations and food for Feed the Need Derm. So I'm not sure if you've seen in Hub and in Heart of Networking, but Marlene and I were raising money. The wrong way. I'm looking at you guys. So yes, we are raising money for Feed the Need Derm. So if you would like to donate food to Feed the Need Derm, you can drop that off to my location, which is in North Oshawa. I can give you the address. You can also drop off donations at the Feed the Need Derm, which is in South Oshawa. I can give you the address as well. And also at North Oshawa UPS store. Heather is the owner there, and she will be accepting food donations. You can also reach out to me if you want to send out monetary donations. And on the 25th, Hub National, all across Canada, we're having a holiday shopping party. So that is $7 for members, $15 for non-members, and that runs until 4:30 Eastern time. That's going to be really amazing. There's going to be all sorts of prizes, games. It's going to be just an amazing, amazing time. So it's going to be cool. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share. Have a wonderful day.
Great. Thanks, Robin. Okay, last but not least, Miss Sue. And then we're going to go back for some networking.
Okay, so thank you, Claudine and Sarah. That was awesome. I've posted mine, and as soon as I disappear, you'll be able to get a good view of it. I've always got something going on at World Event Center, and there's a calendar there, worldeventcenter.com/events. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sue, and thank you for hosting us today, and thank you for everybody for coming, and thank you again, Sarah, for presenting today. Amazing information. I will see you all soon as we continue our 2021 planning. Let's go back and do some more networking. Don't forget to mark your calendar for the Christmas appreciation lunch, 1 p.m. on December the 16th, and I will see you all soon. Mwah. Love you.